the cables outside of the United States, they aren't breaking the law. What they're doing is perfectly fine.
Pretty unlikely, though, that they just draw the line there, considering the breadth of the scope that the Bush administration has taken with regard to their your terrorist position post 9/11, which I think is...
That's true until you start to think about how hard it would really be for them to track every piece of communication within
But
the
they wouldn't have to be
anyway.
doing every piece of communication to be breaking the law.
No, but it wouldn't be, there would be no reason for them to do it if they were just doing, if they're just tapping into a couple people here and there, then that's not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about massive surveillance, taking in every form of communication that goes between all of these different points, which to just track the internet, to just track one email.
They would have to have hired hundreds of thousands of people to do that.
Right. If they actually...
But last time I checked, the employment rate didn't move very much in the last couple of years, so I mean, maybe we're all making this up.
I know. So. And that's Mr. Atkinson's point of view, is that what the ACLU is saying is possible. It's possible, but it would take so much for them, so much manpower, so much money, that it's probably not what they're doing, and it's not the most efficient way anyway.
So then so there's two issues. One, if the scope of the legislation is too broad, and then two, within the legislation, if they're actually breaking the law, if they're following it or not.
Right. With the first issue, whether or not the legislation was too broad, I think it was. But part of the problem is that FISA actually doesn't quite work anymore. And that was the other side of the Bush argument, which was...
Why doesn't it work anymore?
It was inefficient. There was too much red tape. There was too much bureaucracy. It took too much time for them...
Which is why they could justify...
To get the warrant in order for them to...
To creating a legislation that could circumvent.
Right.
But they could have amended FISA. They could
have...
have...
That's the other side of the story. Right. Well, why wouldn't we just amend? Why don't we change the FISA court procedures? Why don't we allow 2 days,
exception,
and then you have to apply for the warrant after that point. And they've done a little bit here and there.
So perhaps the compromise will be something in between the two.
Right.
But in order for us to know what that compromise will be, the NSA has to disclose something. But I think it's really interesting. Wasn't there a news-breaking article just today about the former Attorney General?
And then
Alberto?
Today you hear
Gonzalez,
that,
right?
Well, everyone knows that Gonzalez is about to resign. He has resigned, but he's not finished until mid-September. And now in the news today, Congress is saying that they don't believe that he was completely honest about a surveillance program or the existence thereof, and that they feel as though he has lied when he was in front of Congress. And so I'm curious
if he did, Bush will pardon him on his way out the door anyway, right? I mean, but I'm not here to profess my political views, but I do, as an attorney and just as a citizen of the United States, feel, it's fear of the unknown. And as we continue to uncover and excavate the layers of the legislation, post 9/11 legislation that has passed, it's very scary, I think, for a lot of people too. But I think it's important to have programs like the one we're having today to continue to educate the consumers, because people have to become aware and have to ask the right questions. They have to understand why it's important to support organizations like the ACLU.
Well, and I think a lot of, from 9/11 on, what we have seen is a learning from our mistakes. We made a mistake by not having a good enough surveillance program in the first place so that we could have caught the terrorist before it happened. And then after that, we went too far, and we had too broad of a legislation, and we had and we didn't have enough control over what the administration was really doing then in order to backpedal and now try and protect everyone.
Yeah, and I think that and I think hopefully, thinking optimistically, that we will see over the course of the next, and the changing of the guard of a new presidential administration, that there will be a recalibrating of the powers once again of our system between the judicial system and the executive position
right.
and Congress, and
right.
and hopefully that will, like you said, and we can recalibrate in a way to learn from our mistakes.
Right, but it's funny because, and we can bring this right back to where we started this whole conversation, which is we had, now it didn't end with a 9/11, but in the 70s we had this kind of awakening that the FBI, the CIA, government agencies we're
overstepping their boundaries.
They're overstepping their boundaries. They're invading our privacy. They're kind of taking our rights away a little bit. And right in front of our face. And we didn't know because we weren't checking up on them. And we weren't asking the right questions. And then they create FISA. And then they create the FISA court. And things kind of slow down for a little while. And then we have 9/11. And now we're right back where we started from in a weird way.
In a way, I mean, history is always circular.
Itself. Yeah.
But like I said, I think as we're still a very young nation and still learning how to deal with these very challenging issues, and our government is too. And I think it really boils down to having a more educated citizen and being aware of politics and electing the right people, to reflect the view of the public, in Congress.
I've been watching the debates. I haven't seen that much about any form of terrorist surveillance program.
You're actually right. I've watched a couple too, and it hasn't.
I feel as though everyone's really kind of, we're back to the regular healthcare, education, taxes. I haven't heard anyone really say what they think the president's powers are in those circumstances, whether they think the Bush administration overstepped their boundaries or not, because that's still very much in the air, and what they're going to do, how they're going to handle a case like this, where the government is saying, we can't give you this information because it's a matter of national security, and yet the other side is saying, you are taking away everyone's First and Fourth Amendment rights, you're violating the Constitution.
Coming from more opposite sides of the fence. But, and just to, we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, but just to, has the ACLU even made any headway? Has anyone been able to hear their case and their cries and their pleas for change?
Yes, I think they've made a lot of headway, just in the sense that now people are aware of it.
Right. The point to which we're speaking of, yeah.
Now the cases have gone to court. There have been some cases that were successful. And just to have the public know and be aware of the fact that there is a surveillance program out there that could possibly be watching them, and that they should kind of come up with a decision about how they feel about that, especially right before the election. I think that it's important for people to
establish opinions,
to think about it at least, and I think the ACLU has done that.
That's excellent. Well, thank you very much. I now know a lot more about where we stand. I don't know if that that makes me feel more comfortable or less comfortable that we don't really know what's going on. But like you said, Alberto Gonzalez has just is resigning, and so I think a lot is to be continued. So maybe, and the next time we meet, we'll have a very progressive and entirely different conversation on how everything's being handled.
Maybe we will actually know what happened.
Maybe. Okay. Well, thanks again for tuning in to Media Reporter. Till next time, I'm Jennifer Romano signing out.